to go back to season 1 because his sequence picks up after all of that arc as well. Because you're like, huh, everything you knew before don't matter. Now's the big stuff that happens.
It was the year of fire takes.
The year of deconstruction.
The year we took down Deep Space Nine.
It was the dawn of a new show.
The year of a great journey.
The year of deadlines.
And the year of joy.
It was a new season.
It was the end of another.
It was the year everything changed.
The year is 2026.
The name of the show, You Gotta Check This Out.
Welcome back to You Gotta Check This Out, where two nerds tell you things you gotta check out, usually something nerdy from their past, and as we are discovering things that require a whole lot of time commitment, except we don't ask that of our guests. We are in the midst of Babylon 5. This is kind of interesting because we just got through season 4, kind of in timeline, real world, our timeline. The year is 1997 or 1998. We're going to be discussing the Babylon 5 made-for-TV movie In the Beginning, which did immediately follow season 4 of Babylon 5. It is a prequel that was going to answer all of the questions anyone going into season 5 of Babylon 5 would want to know. And spoiler, it answered really none of them and just raised more.
Just going to say, I have just been through watching the first 4 or 5 seasons of Babylon 5, and this answered absolutely nothing for me, Dre.
Now, with that in mind, Mike, that sounds like an odd thing for us to subject ourselves to. Surely
we need an outside opinion to help us out.
Oh, I was going to say, surely we would not do that to any of our friends, except this out. Mike, what did you do?
No, I got one of my friends to do exactly that too. We have a guest this week. It's going to be Ryan Bond. Ryan, can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
I can. I'm Ryan Bond, former friend of Mike Slater.
Yep, as we just found out.
I am a father of 2 high school students. I am a scout leader. I am a thespian, producer, and actor. I do audio drama. I do podcasts. I do a whole lot of stuff around the Chicagoland area. And I spent a long time doing a lot of really cool, geeky podcasts on board games, on video games, on nerdy topics like this. So it is great to get back in the saddle and just dive into Babylon 5, one of my white whales of TV shows that I could never get very far into.
Can I ask on that, though? Literature-wise, if I understand the Moby Dick metaphor, which I learned in the movie Warrior, he's chasing the white whale.
I have tried, I think, 3 times to get into this show. When it first premiered, I was doing 3D animation, and this show is animated on a piece of software called Lightwave, which was one of the few things that it was actually embedded in a piece of software called Video Toaster. And it eventually spun off from there to become its own thing because of Babylon 5 specifically, because it was so good and cost affordable to the layperson. And I would watch it for the special effects. And I put up through season 1. And as an aspiring writer myself, every plot line that needed to be dropped, every kind of, is it an elf, a dwarf, a wizard, type of homage, they just dropped all this stuff. And it was just so on the nose. And just like this movie, it's been a long time, and this movie just wears it right on its nose. And it's good to be home. It's good to be home in a show that I will chase maybe one more time at some other point in my life, but I didn't get around to it. And I know just enough lore to get irked in the movie.
That's interesting. So how far did you get on your previous watches when you were doing it first in the 90s and then later on when you tried to rev it up again?
I think I finished season 1 and saw lots of trailers for season 2. Maybe I got a brief moments into season 2, which is why it was great to see Bruce Boxleitner in this. And I was like, oh, right. I never really knew when he showed up, but I never really got past maybe 3 or 4 episodes in season 1 on my rewatches on that. Oddly enough, I still have vivid memories of so many of these species because they're so iconic. Like, they did such a good job of making them, vocally distinct and visually distinct.
Between the peacockish hair and the bones on the head, they're just such visual, things you can sink your teeth into and just remember.
And the Vorlons and that type of thing, you'd see these idea of, creatures in exosuits that would show up in games like Mass Effect. And that is a motif that not a lot of Star Trek was doing. And so they just had a character that was a regular reoccurring character that was that mystique on the show.
Usually here's where we do previously on, where, because, we're going through the show sequentially, we kind of fill in whatever people might have missed since the last episode.
Previously on Babylon 5.
This is a little odd since we just finished season 4. This is a prequel to everything. So everything we're going to talk in this movie, it's not spoilery because we have literally discussed all of these plot beats. But I think a few things that are worthwhile, Mike, are we can explain kind of where this falls in the chronology of the story, and then also some of the external stuff. So I'm going to actually start external. So the biggest thing about this that is front and center is this was a made-for-TV movie by TNT. Babylon 5 was a WB production on the now defunct PTN network. They were hoping to make,
previously the UPN.
Yeah, WB had all of them, and I think Babylon 5 was syndicated onto UPN. So I think like PTN and UPN had overlap for sure.
On that, yeah.
Babylon 5 had been on the PTN network under the WB umbrella. What wound up happening is they weren't making money. They kind of went out of business, and Babylon 5 thought they were going to be done after season 4. At the last second, TNT swooped in, picked up the rights to this show, said, we're going to produce a season 5. We're going to release, I think they had a contract for 4 television movies, and they had some spin-off ideas. So with that in mind, TNT picks this up. This was the first movie they produced, and it was supposed to be kind of a combination love letter to the fans for the first 4 seasons of the show, filling in, I'll put in quotes, a lot of the backstory that we've heard throughout the first 4 seasons, sort of introducing people into season 5.
They were trying to make something for everybody at the same time to catch new fans, old fans, and introduce them to the show. It ended up ultimately being something for nobody, but I think at the time, it really struck exactly what they wanted it to be because they expected a certain amount of viewership. And I was reading they had 3 times the viewership that they expected when they released this movie. So they had a lot more people got to know Babylon 5 in that run on TNT. This did end up succeeding for TNT and brought in a huge amount of viewership for them from Babylon 5.
For a brief period of time. And the story basically was like TNT, for instance, was the home of the NBA. The hope was, okay, we're going to have these Babylon 5 fans, we're going to have these sports fans, and they're going to cross over. And according to at least JMS's stories, they wound up never crossing over. So TNT's complaint was, nobody's watching either product, so we're just competing with ourselves. Why would we give airtime to Babylon 5?
Yeah, it started out strong, but it didn't, it kind of petered out through that, and the actual new episodes of season 5 were coming out.
Yeah, that's that spin-off era where everyone was trying to find some way to spin something off, and it's some hit, but most didn't.
So that's kind of the background, the TNT thing that was going on. We're trying to kind of fill in some of the backstory for people that maybe have missed it. And in terms of storyline, it's in a really weird spot, I think you would agree, Mike, because there is a season 3 episode where they travel in time. And we go forward 20 years in the future and see an aging Londo Mollari, and the entire show has had a prophecy around him. And so we fall right there to kind of the end of our show that we've seen time-wise, because 20 years in the future is the farthest we've seen on the show, albeit via time travel. And then he goes back to the beginning before the pilot to explain what's going on.
Yeah, like this show, the movie connects up exactly with that episode. Like you're seeing events from the actual television episode going into the end, just making an even more odd experience. I mean, I'm interested when we get to that, hearing from you, Ryan, if any of that played for you at all at the end, because they were playing a lot of scenes from season 3 and 4 and trying to make it like some big thing.
Weighing in, I mean, I think there's a lot of commentary that gets dropped out there, and it's not really sure whether it is. When I go back to my memory of Babylon 5 season 1, they were always alluding to elements that happened, and you always knew they were going to kind of hopefully get dished out. Sheridan's mysterious memory loss that he has at the beginning of the first episode of the season 1, which gets explained here. And Londo right at the end, he's just as the whole, and this is more decisions and worseness to come in the years ahead. And it's like, how is this a movie, right? I had no context where it's at in the sphere of things. So it felt, okay, this is where we end. Like I was watching the timer on the bottom of the film and I'm like, this is just going to get wrapped up real quick. There's 9 minutes left. And then Londo's even like, there's even more as the shadowy figure and whatnot happens kind of towards the end. So it's there.
It was a thing.
Did they have any goal with the show, or was it like, did they come out and say, we are trying to tell this part of the story or give some fan service, or it was strictly to try and fill that contract gap and they could use the same sets, a bunch of the same characters? Like, what was their internal or external stated goal for this thing?
Yeah, it really feels, hey, we just need something to get new viewers into the show. Can we just fill in some of the cracks? But even so, there's a lot of scenes in this that are literally clip shows taken from the series.
Oh, wow.
We're all video game fans, as we've noted. And, on modern video games with cutscenes where you find someone who's done an amalgam of all the cutscenes, that's almost what this is for in the beginning, is almost someone saying, I went through all of the flashbacks and lore through the first 4 seasons, and I put the cutscenes together and you can watch them. And I did that, for instance, for Game of Thrones. I couldn't watch a few seasons, and I was like, I really want to know Arya's arc. And so someone out there, here's all the Arya scenes put together. I'm like, awesome. I don't have to watch the whole series. Yeah. I'll just watch those. That's basically what this movie is.
So you're saying this whole movie is basically just like the season 5 Babylon 5 intro, where they just cut a bunch of scenes together with some exciting music and cut them together in a montage.
Really? I mean, I think that sums it up.
Well, then what about going the other way, right? What did this show help the next season do? Is it just the Londo prophecy that's the only thing that it kind of leads into?
Yeah, unfortunately. There's a bunch of stuff with telepaths, but now that you're bringing that up, they kind of do the same thing with the story at the end of season 5 that they do with this movie, because Londo kind of revisits a lot of beats that another character went through, and you just get to watch him go through the same story and his end play out. So it's almost, you're kind of watching something you've already watched in season 5, just like we're doing with this movie here.
Yeah, it's rough as you're asking, because you're like, what was the goal? What did this accomplish? And I mean, J. Michael Straczynski was unexpectedly picked up by TNT. So that means not only did he close off Babylon 5 in season 4 and then have to start everything up again, when they're like, and we're going to give you 4 movies, it's okay, well, now you have to bang out a season of television and a movie, and it's okay, what can you write? And he just had this in mind, and it's okay, all of these characters can mostly play, and that's even a problem that we'll discuss. So yeah, I think I don't have much more to say, because we're just gonna have to get into it and explain along the way. But Ryan, I'm not even gonna try and pretend there's some secret answer at the end. I got nothing. As you're asking these questions, the goal, what did this accomplish?
Did you say asking questions, Dre?
I did say asking. What does that have to do with anything, Mike?
Because now it's time for the Talia Winters memory quiz.
Nice.
Ryan, are you ready for some questions to see if you actually watched that movie we asked you to?
Oh boy, will I get kicked off the podcast if I don't answer them? Oh.
Almost certainly not.
We might give you bonus points if you're like, actually, I turned it off and watched this instead. Let's talk about that. I'd be like, okay, let's do it.
There are the rules for the multiplayer, Ryan. What you're going to need you to do is you're going to need to say your name to buzz in, followed by the answer. We're going to go through 5 questions on the movie. If you get it right, you get a point. Otherwise, I'll give the other person multiple choices and they'll get a chance to answer. And if no one buzzes in by the time I get bored, I will just give you the multiple choice questions for both of you. Ready to start?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. Whims of a Child. What is the Centauri kid's command at the beginning of the movie?
Ryan.
Yes.
Tell me a story.
That's it. He just wants to tell him a story. Londo went ahead and gave him all the powers of the Emperor, and that's all
And the kid actually gets corrected by his sister, who asks for additional qualifications to the, quote, tell me a story.
Exactly, and make it this and it. But yeah, I didn't pay attention past that, because I went right to the next category, which is nerd numbers. How many years ago does Londo say the story began?
Dre?
Brian.
Dre got in first.
It should be 30, right?
No, 30 is incorrect. Ryan, here are your multiple choices. 15, 35, 50, 100, or 150 years ago.
My answer was 35.
35 is correct. He says it was 35 years ago.
Yeah, it's fair, actually. Oh, that makes, because the Earth-Minbari War would be 10 years before Babylon. And then, okay, that.
Nerd.
I did that. My math was wrong. All right.
All right, that's 2 for Ryan. 1 steal and 1 natural. All right. Category the third. It's not a rumor. What Earth expression does Londo use to introduce his story?
Dre, pride goeth before the fall.
Pride goeth before the fall. You've got it.
But you have to say it like Londo says it.
You have to say it to Goro and said, Mr. Garibaldi.
That's my go-to. That's always Mr. Garibaldi.
Mr. Garibaldi.
Pride goeth before the fall.
Pride goeth before the fall, as they say on Earth. Oh, wait. Back to the quiz. Question the fourth. We have nerdier numbers. General Leftcourt says how much of the enemy population is part of their military?
Dre, 1/3.
100%. It's because it's the Minbari. 1/3, it's the warrior caste.
Or like the whining cast.
Ryan throwing shade here, starting Earth-Minbari War Part 2. All right.
All right, this is Biblical Situations. What is the name of Susan Ivanova's brother?
Ivan, Ryan.
Ivan is incorrect. I'll give you a quarter of a point because that is my first multiple choice. Dre, here's your multiple choice questions here. A, Ivan. B, Alexander. C, Floyd. D, Dmitri. Or E, Ganya.
I think it's B.
No, it was actually Ganya.
Ganya, all right.
Yeah. They actually said it 3 times. She called him on one, and then they actually said his name over the loudspeaker.
Ganya Fulia.
Ganya Fulia. All right, so that leaves us at, that was the first time we didn't get after the multiple choice one. So Dre got 2 and Ryan got 2. 2-2, tie score today.
All right, Dre here from the future, and I hate to do this to myself. Mike gives me a tie-break win coming up. However, if we listen back, Mike gave Ryan a quarter of a point as a bonus for guessing one of his multiple choice questions, which means at this moment, the score is actually 2.25 to 2, which means despite the fact that I do get the bonus point, we never should have gone into extra quarters. And upon official review, Ryan is the winner of this quiz.
Tell you what, I got a bonus one. We'll do one for a quick, I have no multiple choice on this, so someone's just going to have to get it. What species did Earth first encounter that made them feel bullish in provoking the Minbari?
Dre, Delgar.
Delgar, correct.
With that being said, we get to go in the beginning of In the Beginning. This was wild. I'm going to do this a lot, Ryan, where I literally stop and say, how the heck did this scene hit you? And I get to do it immediately. This movie opens with what is either a drug PSA or a documentary, with actors from the show in character looking straight at the screen, kind of doing a monologue, but being like, great stories, have histories and whatever. And Mike and I both in the notes were just like, what is going on? Because, it's not them talking or like the Lord of the Rings narrator with, like a font coming up or something. It's like the person that plays Delenn looking at camera, and it felt like a documentary. So when we asked you to watch this and you started up, how did that first scene hit you?
So I was struggling because I didn't look it up. I was going to let the movie stand on its own about like where does this stand, right, in the sequence of things, and it didn't help me. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Where the tone is being set. Are we in the past? Are we in the future? I mean, in the beginning, you can go ahead and say, sure, maybe it is in the beginning, but it doesn't have to be a prequel either. Like it could be the start of some other arc, right? Through any of that. So I was waiting for the Wheaties or the Kellogg's Frosted Flakes to come sliding into the background with the witness protection stuff of it. And it's the same stuff that Londo does at other particular points. Like they add this gravitas to it that as the viewer, they never even answer most of it, but they're just like, there's big stuff happening, but let's show you something else.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we'll get to that because then what we get to is the real start. We have the fake start of the movie and the real start, and it's Princess Bride, which honestly I don't hate. We get 2 kids running around in what should be an ornate palace, what in reality, as you noted, Ryan, looks like a laser tag arena, but with a woman with a bad accent, can't go for the accents, stopping them, and they run up to what we know as Londo Mollari, the Emperor. This is Centauri Prime 20 years after the end of our show, because Londo made a deal with the devil and then, this is weird, right? Betrayed the devil, for however you'd want to phrase that.
Went back on the deal, figure out how to get out of the deal and cook the devil in return.
And if we're keeping like Lord of the Rings metaphors, because this is related to Lord of the Rings, it would be like someone who's working for Sauron, betraying him at the last second, and then one of Sauron's, fledglings, like Wormtongue or whatever, right, going to have revenge as a result. So that's happened to Londo Mollari. He's the Emperor of Centauri Prime. Some servants of the shadows, who were the big bad he betrayed, have taken over Centauri Prime. They have blown up. They have bombs all over the planet. They have blown up a third of it. They are threatening to do more. Londo's in a precarious situation, which is where the movie ends and continues in the story. And when we get there, we'll get there. So one of the things we've established in lore is, as the Emperor, his little thing around his neck, if he gives it to someone, they can request a wish, a favor, something. Londo in show lore did that to request a divorce from one of his wives. They're a polygamous society, so he had 3 wives. He asked to divorce all of his wives.
And he loved all his wives. He loved them all.
I think that one thing that they use the framing device really well, though, throughout this, is it really shows that this could all just be through Londo remembering things. There's a whole bunch of times during this movie where, wait, that wouldn't have happened that way. Like, he wouldn't have met him too early on. And then you realize this is all just Londo telling a story. It can be like he wouldn't have been in many of these meetings, of course, that this dialogue was happening. So it's all him just filling in the blanks for stuff.
Well, you mentioned the Lord of the Rings, right? It's, Bilbo and the elves in Rivendell, telling their versions of the story of the Silmarillion, or telling their versions of other elements there. They weren't all there to go ahead and recount the tale. They had to hear it from other people. But it also gives the writer here an exit button later on if he ever needs to go, well, that was a story and it wasn't actual events.
I am furious at both of you because you are correct. Because I had those exact comments of, wait a minute, Londo wouldn't have been there. Wait a minute, why don't these two people remember each other? And it also even answers another kind of point I had. So figure, stay in the background a little here, Ryan, and you would have seen this in season 1. Londo Mollari's character arc on the show is he is a bumbling buffoon from a declining empire that never achieved greatness, right? He's like a never was, that had a good family, that never lived up to the name, that feels horrible. And then when he gets a chance at greatness via, bad decisions, deal with the devil, he takes it and has to deal with the ramifications. When he's telling this story, and he's in every major event, I actually said, hey, you kind of ruined his arc. I hate to be that guy with the Han shot first. I'm like, his character had an arc. And if he's coming into season 1 of Babylon 5 as a badass that made bad decisions, that's become a drunkard and just does it all over again, that is much different than never did anything, feels bad about that.
Yeah, he's just like Forrest Gumping himself in like the whole story of Babylon 5 as it's been.
And by this, you mean like the office visits early on as like the ambassador or whatever. He's kind of filling in that role and giving them advice. Like,
yeah, when they made this important decision and I was there to tell them they were wrong. And it's cool. Well, your backstory in season 1 is that you're a fool and no one takes you seriously and you haven't done anything important. So that kind of contradicts it.
Well, it comes up again later, too, because he says he's the one that gave the order later on in the movie to send out the ships against them.
I mean, does it contradict it? Or he's telling the story? He's the storyteller.
So I'm annoyed because I'm agreeing where it does basically say, okay, that actually is in character, that he's going to inflate his importance in this important story. And we as the audience, not you though, Ryan, like you as a new person, like what's going on? We as the people that have been watching this for 4 seasons, oh yeah, he's over embellishing how important he was.
Yeah. That's not in the context here for me.
Yeah. So we can write around it. We've done that before for the show. So I'm glad you're agreeing with me there. At least it's not in that. So we do get that. Londo's like, in the beginning, I had more hair and clearly wasn't just me and makeup, because he still looks ancient, but he has like black hair. And we're introduced to Earth. And I do think this is important because we have Earth as a kind of newfound power in the galaxy. So it's not like Star Trek where they have the Prime Directive. They've kind of just exceeded the Prime Directive in Babylon 5 lore. And they're saying, hey, we're going to go out in the galaxy. We're going to expand. They talk to the Centauri, Londo Mollari, who is of the Centauri, and he's kind of slow your roll. And they have a lot of ego and arrogance in saying,
Well, that's why the bonus question came from, because this is just after Earth has had its first battle against the Dilgar, so they're all puffed up and ready to go see what else is out there.
And we do get, sort of in a good way, an introduction to, at least in lore. So like for you, Ryan, I mean, you would have known this already watching this show, but for a new person, if this is their first viewing, we do get some importance of the Minbari, where they're basically kind of painted as, China, right? A closed off civilization, but like with technology far advanced if we're going far enough back in history. And he's saying that don't awake the sleeping dragon. They're super powerful. We didn't mess with them even at the height of our powers, which is interesting because that doesn't really fall into our lore, but we'll give it to them. Don't mess with them. If you're going to approach them, don't approach with a lot. And Earth is saying, we just beat the Dilgar. We'll be able to handle anybody. We don't need to listen to you. And like I said,
they're just trying to get weapons pretty much from Lado and get like military secrets, just, to see how big the Minbari military really is.
Well, and you've got to your point, you have a story within a story, right? He is also puffing himself up in his own story as well. So in the sense of don't wake the sleeping dragon, that's also the foreshadowing that a story ends up having as well. It may or may not have been that, but it still is the point where that story narrative goes, because he has hindsight to look foresighted.
Yes.
Its hindsight is 2020.
100%. And that was that's in all of the intro crawls of the show, is that the Babylon station was created as a result of the Earth Minbari War. So when we have Londo saying, hey, Earth, don't go near the Minbari, I mean, like, we already, like, that's not even a spoiler. You know what's going to happen. All right, we get some Rangers. Mike. So now we go to the Minbari, our boneheads. We get Lanan, who is the leader of the Rangers. We haven't met this person before, but like an old guy. And I'm forgetting who he's meeting, like another dude. I can't remember if it's Grey Council. But two Minbari
it's one of the warrior council he's meeting with to try and get the Rangers to have some support from the warrior council, because it's been 1,000 years since we've had this prophecy in Minbari by Valen, who we've known about for a while. Well, we've known about. Ryan maybe hasn't. But he is trying to get them to take this prophecy seriously, because the Rangers are like this old, decrepit, shabby group of warriors who haven't gotten any support from the actual warrior caste.
Anytime you're like, there's a prophecy and it's 1,000 years old. I mean, how, again, 6th grade writing can you be?
And there's a lot of Game of Thrones overlap in this show, including final seasons were rushed, even though things were telegraphed, so things were hit and miss. But it's very much the wall in Game of Thrones, where they're told this wall is important, you have to man it. And after years and years of nothing happening, people are just like, this is kind of a joke. And so the Rangers were told that 1,000 years ago, the Rangers are formed. They were told in 1,000 years, the shadows are going to come back. You're going to have to be the thing that keeps the shadows away. And, we get a nice bit of insight into the Minbari. Like, we've seen hubris on both sides, and Londo even comments on it, where the Earth are like, we're a new power. We're just getting powerful. We can do anything. The Minbari are saying, everything's been fine for 1,000 years. Why do we need to do anything for the Rangers? And he basically says, hey, let me talk to the Grey Council, who we'll all know, and I think you would have known, which is the secret leader caste of the Minbari. And then we get almost an alien abduction for an alien by his own aliens.
Yeah, he goes to bed, and then all these creepy religious guys come and visit him at night, just take him to a beam of light.
Because this was made for TV, there are commercial breaks. And the way they do that is the Princess Bride. So like, he gets beamed up and the little kid's like, wait a minute, you said there was going to be a war. And he's, don't worry, the war is coming after Wheaties. And then we get some like crazy angles when we come back to the next scene.
You'll get the romance, and then we'll get to the next part, kid.
Is this a kissing show? I made the joke earlier, but like as a warrior cast, they feel very milquetoast. They're just there's no Klingonness to them. There's no like Jem'Hadar. There's nothing. They're just, we're welcome to our secret sorority fraternity hazing session, and we're all going to stand in circles in robes. And, you're the welcome to the lambdas and whatever. And it's like, where's the edge to any of them? Right. And even, spoiler, there's some stuff that we'll get to later, but like all of a sudden, like one of the warriors is just like crying. And I'm like, what is going on? This is not the scariest warrior class.
It's like the warrior council room where they just talk about stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of times in the actual episodes where they go into some of their rituals, their wars that they have against each other. But yeah, even that, it's almost one guy will come in and stir up the pot for the warrior class, and he'll usually be taken down. So no, we talk about these things.
The other funny part of this scene when we're talking like the warriors and things, we are introduced to Dukat, who is awesome. I forget the actor. I think he played in a Mortal Kombat movie, so I really like him, and he's pretty cool. So we have the leader of the Grey Council. The Grey Council as a whole doesn't want to do anything listening to the Rangers, and the Warriors, as you mentioned, are all milquetoast. It's a problem because it's supposed to be like a cool reveal when one of the Warrior cast reveals who they are, and it's no one even a fan of the show would know. And the real problem is all the people we'd be excited, like Naroon is who we'd be excited for. They're not on the Grey Council yet in show lore. So that's the problem, is you can't do a cool reveal because the lore of the show dictates we wouldn't know anybody. That comes later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was such a weird part where that hood reveal, because I thought, oh, this is someone I'm supposed to know, because the music went, done as
that guy.
Who is that guy? Because I thought it was like, oh, is that F. Murray Abraham? They just give an episode. Like, nope, that's not F. Murray Abraham in bonehead makeup.
But I did getting the introduction to Dukat, who was the leader of the Minbari before the Earth Minbari War. Wonder what's going to happen there. And we see how kind of clever he is. So of the scenes in the movie, the frat thing, Ryan, you're the second person to make that observation. So agreed. The set's not great. The reveals aren't great. A lot of this stuff is ham-fisted. We get some mentions of Vorlons, which we'll get to. They're like, why haven't the Vorlons done anything? But some of Dukat's playfulness in this was pretty cool.
Yeah, Dukat came off the best, I think, in this scene here. He's the first time that anybody really came alive too much after the story was introduced from Londo, like his character, because the other guy, Leonin, it's just like you're kind of following him, but even I have seen to just watched all of this, really wasn't sure what his role was. I had to go back and watch it again. What is he? And like, he has something to do with the Rangers, but what do they even want to do?
Yeah, it's definitely in that area where if you don't know enough of the backstory, you just have to go to the trope. Right, you just have to lean on, oh, it's Secret Council, it's 1,000-year prophecy, it's a ranger. Like all of the proper nouns are all there just to do it. I'll grant them one thing is that, Babylon, at least in this show, does not use a lot of complicated jargon words. It's very accessible through a lot of that stuff. So you can attach to the Minbari and the Centauri and the Vorlon and the Shadows and that stuff really easily because those are the few, other than a name, capital words. There's no Jeffrey's tubes and phalanx things and induced computers and like just the jargon where you're like, oh God, can you stop?
So like
this is getting too meta because we keep talking about how this movie is a callback to a lot of stuff, and we get to do callbacks to stuff I'm excited about. So Dukat leaves, he goes to his chamber, and we get what I call Kosh out of nowhere. So Vorlons are these, I've explained this too many times, Mike, and it doesn't relate to this movie, so it doesn't matter. But a Vorlon is there, and they're in this giant encounter suit that behind the scenes could not fit through doors. So that's what we know. It's a slow moving like mech that's moving around, which is kind of cool. But what makes that funnier is in show, routinely, this character named Kosh would just sneak up on people. And you just had to ask, like, how did you get there? And after a while, I started calling it Kosh out of nowhere. And then, spoiler, he does die in the show. So we lose him. So we lost our Kosh out of nowhere.
The guy's bigger than most doors on
There was
Babylon
like a whole
5.
season 1 operation, right? Like where they were in some operating room.
Yeah, there's a couple scenes like that.
I did get my Kosh out of nowhere, Mike. There was a lot bad about this movie, and that genuinely excited me to the point that I had to add it to the script. So Dukat knows about Vorlons. We're going to Zaha Doom. If you're a fan of the show, you know where everything's going, but
everything leads to Zaha Doom in Babylon 5.
So for whatever reason, Sheridan's in the past talking to Leftcourt, and Leftcourt's saying, hey, Sheridan. So Sheridan is Tron. Bruce Boxleitner is going to go on to be the captain of Babylon 5 at season 2. And what I did notice you did, Brian, is you conflated Sheridan and Sinclair. But for what it's worth, that literally happened. Is like the whole show was planned around Sinclair. The actor had off-screen issues and had to leave. And he just inserted Sheridan. Was like, they're the same. Pay it, no mind, same person. So it is confusing. But
ignore the Darrens. Yeah.
It is 100% a Darren. But they were just like, this is her new husband, Derek. At least had the decency to change the character, but then had all of the same attributes of the previous one. So Sheridan is there. and is getting told by Leftcourt, who incidentally in season 4, him and Leftcourt fought. So this is kind of funny. It's like back when they were friends.
Yep, this is the same general that we just covered in last episode too, because we got his episode on.
Yeah, it's fun back to get double doses of quadruple doses, because these are both double. So Leftcourt's telling Sheridan, hey, why don't you go check out the Minbari on the Prometheus, 2 on the nose on the names, with Captain Jankowski. And Sheridan basically says, I think this is a bad idea. This guy was court-martialed for first contact. Why would you send him and leave? So we're getting Sheridan knows what he's talking about. Earth making bad decision. And I did put in the notes, I actually have not hated this about Babylon 5, where yes, people are making bad decisions. That's not a plot hole, and that does actually make it feel more grounded, because I think any of us has been at a job, a place, a thing where someone in charge makes a bad decision that people are literally telling them in real time is a bad decision, and just the bureaucracy keeps it going.
Yeah, Sheridan gets his chance right here to just turn the whole thing down and dismiss him. So, it kind of shows the type of character he is right away. It's, no, I'm not going to work with that guy. I'm not going to put up with this.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that happens in a lot of sci-fi stuff for TV purposes, really, which is the fact that if it was a real military organization, if we just used our own United States military organization, just decisions are not made fast. They're not made by 3 dudes in a room most of the time, right? There is a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of that stuff, but we're not really interested in the Star Wars, senator debate problem that would need to happen through a lot of these types of things. So like we focus in on a couple of people, and those are the ones who get stuff done. And
yeah, like you're saying, everybody represents something bigger than them. To get these ideas in, you have to do something quick. Yeah, everything's a metaphor.
All right, our next scene, and Mike, I'm going to have you talk. Mike loves and knows a lot of game, and this is definitely a game of Secret Vorlon. Our next scene is Dukat and Delenn talking on their ship as they're on their way to Zahadum, and Delenn is cracked that, hey, is Dukat hiding a Vorlon?
Delenn was the person on the council when she was with all the gray hoodies that brought up that they should go to Zahadum. She has a lot to do with the Vorlons throughout the entire series. Like, it's seen that Delenn is one of like almost the secret elders throughout the series, having machinations going on and plans with Vorlons. So this is the one thing that, as a recent watcher of the series, that I really appreciated. This kind of shows how she first got in on those plans where the Vorlons were planning on doing things with Sinclair.
We do see Delenn get brought onto the Grey Council. This is a repeat of things we've seen on the show, following into Firelight. Right as Delenn is joining the council is when the Earth opened fire on the Minbari accidentally. And we've kind of explained why this would happen, which is Earth is going to slowly creep into Minbari space. The ruling class, the Grey Council, are going to go on a secret mission. They don't want to raise suspicion. Mike, you mentioned Delenn said, hey, we're going to go to Zahadum. And they said, if we're going to do that, we don't want people to know it's a fuss. So they're doing that. So they're both on the edge of Minbari space, and no one's supposed to know they're there. And we do just discover quickly how outclassed Earth is, which is the Minbari sensors just to scan a ship are enough to disable parts of the Earth ship. And there's a cloaking thing, so Earth can't even see them entirely. Like they can see the echo. They can determine something is there almost via the Predator thing, right? It looks a little weird, but they can't see it. Their weapons can't lock onto it.
I thought that was pretty cool, because that's something we always see in especially Star Trek or other things. It's like we as the viewer are shown an image of a blank spot, but we can kind of see these wavy lines or this viewing where the ship would be. It's sometimes implied that only us as the viewer can see that and the people on the ship can't. And it's like, it was one of the guys of the kids like, what are those wavy lines doing over there? Let's check out that thing area. So I kind of felt that he was actually using that in the script. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, it's the context of kind of what's going on. I did that they leaned into that aspect of it through some of that. I mean, I struggle with what's going to be almost the fallout of this next part, right? Like you've got these two groups kind of clashing at each other, and I was struggling to kind of understand how Earth got so militarized, had all these ships and going out. Like, why would they have so much military if they're only a couple of decades out? Like that stuff can't be cheap.
Yeah, it's the whole Dilgar thing that we kept bringing up, because the Dilgars were attacking all of these smaller places, all the non-aligned worlds that would eventually come on Babylon 5. And Earth wasn't necessarily a power force, but they were kind of like the last tipping point, so that to help the one that let them all. So Earth got a much bigger inflated sense of what it could do, thinking that we're the saviors of the galaxy. Oh, there's these Minbar that we keep hearing are tough. They're ready to just go and like mess with them right away. So, I mean, this captain here who's on the Prometheus, he almost comes across as drunk on power, trying to go through it. Yeah, like they're just scanners. We can go with him. And immediately it turns sour on him.
They get attacked by Earth that is doesn't have the sensors, but is able to see where they are, just, shotguns at them. Because the Minbari weren't ready for it, they get shot down. And this is like a trope that's explained and relied upon heavily, which is the Minbari, at least a third of them, are heavily warrior. And they believe that showing your weapons is a sign of respect. So if they show up to someone in a battle, they have their gun ports open, they let you scan them. So it's like, we are showing you our weapons to show you that we respect you. And then the Earth person interprets that as a sign of aggression. So that's, the misunderstanding, at least of saying fire, because the Minbari weren't ready for it. They go down because they were on a stealth mission. They're not ready for it. And Dukat, our, big hero, winds up dying. And as he's dying, he talks to the Len. There's an episode about that. We're not going to give spoilers on it. Go back in time and listen to the Dreamatorium episode.
Yeah, we already covered that.
That was an episode. Oh my God.
To go back a point, right? When you've got this, you actually have some poignancy that could happen in that show about the idea of alien culture meets human culture and misunderstands. And it is the idea that like they have a different view, right? They come with their weapons bearing, like I put my sword out, right? That's actually why in medieval, while you tip your helmet up, that's where the salute actually comes from. The idea was you'd lift up you'd lift up to see the eyes of your enemy, and then you'd close them down. You're like, that's where part of that comes from, the salute. And to strike someone while they were doing that, right, would be horrible. And that's exactly what the Earth does in that situation. And there's no conversation a la space opera or space politics or Star Trek, this idea that there's culture inside any of this stuff. It glossed right over to the war, which is their choice. But there are interesting sci-fi type of alien foreign culture tropes or culture groups that they could lean into, and that is that they just move right into the war.
And we get, Londo doing the voiceover. Minbari are just, batting Earth around like nothing, which makes complete sense. That's what Londo said, right? It's
they were completely warned about it. Don't fuck with them or you're going to find out.
Yeah. And that has absolutely happened. And then we cut back to, so we already kind of knew Sheridan, but we see him again where he's going to get put on the Lexington, which is a trivia answer, by the way, Mike, if you want a spoiler. And so he's going to go on the Lexington. Then we also meet Susan Ivanova, who will later be the second in command on Babylon 5 through all of it. So we're seeing where they're at in the war.
This is a very Han Solo moment because it explains why she only wears one earring on the show.
Which
she gave the other one to her brother.
I had never even noticed that, but that does make sense.
Neither did I until I read that trivia on the show.
What I loved, by the way, though, about this is Susan Ivanova is Russian. On the first season of the show, like what you would have seen, Ryan, she plays very stilted and she kind of has a pseudo-Russian accent for stuff. And wisely, the actor, the director makes the decision going forward. They're like, just don't do it. Just be Claudia Christensen. Just talk. Be a human. And she's really badass. And she literally ends season 4 with an amazing monologue that Mike, we have our Mike version of it. So maybe we'll play them side by side at some point in the future.
Yeah, I got to recreate that last episode.
Nice.
But in this scene, she's talking to her brother and he's got a thick Russian accent and I'm going off to war. Don't worry, I'll be all right. And she's like, here's an earring. Of course you'll be all right. You're coming back. He's speaking with a heavy Russian accent and she's just talking normal. And I was just chuckling, but I also just went, that means that Claudia Christensen was like, yeah, I'm not talking with an accent. So I absolutely dug that.
Cool. All right. So we go on after the brother goes off to war. We're going on to a scene where Londo is telling the Earth representative that they can't buy any weapons against the Minbari. So the Earth is still trying to, drum up their war effort against the Minbari and going to deal with Londo to get them from the Centauri, which is so far the only other alien race they've had big contact with.
Yeah, this was an interesting scene in the sense where I thought a lot of lore was given. A lot of it made sense because, as Mike said, they asked the Centauri for weapons. And he's like, I told you, and that's going to have my serial number on it, so no. So that's the Centauri. We're introduced to the Narn and Jakar, and other main characters there. There's no reason all these people should be there, but you've explained it that Lano's just inserting. Unnarn was there. Let's just say it was Jakar.
Make it Jakar.
Actually, yeah, that's
he's
like
the one idol.
Yeah, the Simpsons episode where he's telling the stories. Let's say Mo. Yeah, let's say Jakar. So Jakar is there, and he says, hey, we'll sell you weapons. First off, for one of the reasons that Londo is actually legitimately worried about, it's going to curry favor with the Earth. We're going to charge you a lot for it. We're going to get good relationships as a result. Incidentally, they're based on Centauri technology. So we know in the show, the Narn and Centauri fighting is a huge thing. So we get more of that, where he says, hey, when we were fighting with the Centauri, we took their weapons and we wouldn't have a problem if they got in trouble. So he's like, if the Minbari catch these weapons, they'll think the Centauri helped you and get mad. Or you win and we're happy. It's like, it's win-win. And again, this gives a lot of lore, but it actually, this is one of those scenes that does effectively. And I'm not shocked because it has Peter Jurasik and Andreas Katsoulis. I think I've said, a billion times to you now, Mike, they're one of the bright spots acting wise of this show that when they are on air does elevate things. Next scene, Delenn is feeling she's like, oh man, why'd I do this? People are like, aren't you happy? You literally asked for that. She's like, I don't know. I feel kind of bad. And she goes into a room. Linon, the ranger guy, will end up there, but she runs into a Vorlon. She runs into Kosh. Kosh out of nowhere. She runs into both Koshes, actually, and that's a cute little joke, just as an FYI. She says, what's your name? He says, Kosh. There is another Vorlon. So one of those Vorlons is going to be good in show lore. One of them is going to be evil. And when that evil one was introduced, they said, what's your name? He said, we're all Kosh. But the Vorlons, we have a message for you. They have the hologram, all of Star Wars from Dukat. And he's like, this is Dukat. If I'm dead, just an FYI, you should really hook up with the humans. They're really important. So I really just sincerely hope that if you're getting this message, you have not started a plan to annihilate all humans. Just throwing that out there, Dukat out. And then the ranger guy that we don't know, like fans of the show don't know, but he comes out of the shadows too. And he's like, they said they'd give you this message when the time is right. And you're like, why would you? But you were on the ship and it's been months. Like what? Even in storyline as this is happening, I'm like, what? Yeah.
I was still struggling, as I was mentioning earlier, about the fact that, as soon as that guy gets killed and she starts whining and she's just, kill them all, kill them. It was just the escalation and the range that her character is put through, not her acting, but the flip-floppingness of it is just, it's so much. And it is like feeling that like the strain of trying to fit a lot of narrative in a really tight window.
Yeah. And even that particular scene you just mentioned is a clip from the show too. That's like they exactly went through this part of the movie in an episode. This is just kind of just showing more context around it.
And that's part of the problem, right? Is that if you've got a 42-minute show and you're doing a 5-minute flashback and you need to very quickly convey something, sure, that blah, 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 blah she did works in the context of that. Now, when you have an hour and 40-minute movie and you have someone literally slowly like Londo material, this is what was happening in the war at this time, and then that's what cuts in. I felt very jarred. I don't think I'm alone. And I was just laughing at the message that they said they give it to you when the time is right. The subtle defense of that is a lot of this show has prophecy. And so I wouldn't be shocked if they were like, we're not giving it to you when it's right, as in would be useful. We're giving it to you when the prophecy says we're supposed to give it to you. And we'll get it. All right, I'm going to combine a bunch happens at the same time. So like 3 plot lines, but let's set the stage here. Let's do the Dre Gambit, Mike. Put all the pieces in place.
Then it's not the one where the Mike Gambit, where I lick the piece and dare you to play with it.
Yes, that is a thing, Ryan, by the way, the Mike Gambit. So, all right. Sheridan becomes Starkiller. This is in show lore. So Earth's just getting waxed. Sheridan's on the Lexington. The Lexington, they go into an ambush, and I actually really like this bit of world building because Earth is losing the Earth Minbari war. And we are also seeing that not only are the Minbari just outclassed, they're toying with them, right? They're out in the middle of space and the Minbari keep ambushing them. So not only do they want to win, they want to win being duplicitous. So The Lexington is, mostly debilitated. The captain is dead, so Sheridan's the captain now.
Yep, and this is one of the events that we've heard about a lot throughout the history of Babylon 5. Like, this is Sheridan's big moment where he first gets a lot of attention in the military right here.
And what his plan is, he goes, okay, we're trapped in the middle of space. We can't call for help because if we do, they're going to hear us and blow us up. So we're going to mine some asteroids because they're in the middle of an asteroid field. We're going to call for help. When they come in to take us out, we'll detonate the asteroids and maybe we have a prayer. And of course, maybe we'll get blown up too, but they don't. And it turns out that they blow up the biggest starship in the Minbari Armada. And I actually thought, as I mentioned, this was kind of good character building because we even have Delenn talking to the warrior cast at one point. Like I said, a bunch of scenes happen. We don't need to go each one in depth. But she's noting, she's just, you're warriors. You like winning. The Ranger guys, we got to fight the shadows. That's a hard battle. You're fighting Earthers. That's easy. And we have the biggest ship coming to a distress call to take out a wounded ship. So we're getting a real sense that the warrior cast of the Minbari, they're not honorable. They don't fight with honor. They kick you while you're down. That's a big problem. So that's phase one.
Yeah, they're just classically, they're kind of overextending themselves. They've just so underestimated their enemy at this point. They're like, yeah, we're just like messing with ants with a magnifying glass at this point is how they feel.
100%. Yeah. So that's player one. Did the Legend of Starkiller play it all to you, Ryan?
That one didn't. There's all these legends and prophecies that kind of keep getting dropped. I was trying to remember and piece together again because the shadows come back out, right? And I was trying to remember the Vorlon history and the shadow history and who's who, and then they're trying to jam this into this story now too. I was like, oh, this stuff starts back then too. So there's a lot of weaves all trying to be woven.
Yeah, and for how important these shadows and telepaths are in this universe, nary a sight of them in this callback could have been important. Other people we get in place now. So Sheridan's now important, but his ship is out of commission. He's a big deal. So that's Sheridan. We get Dr. Franklin, who apparently he worked with the Minbari.
Yeah, well, we know, but that's in his background. He was always a hitchhiker on ships. So when he was young, he went out and just kind of wandered out in space, like an early walkabout he did.
Yeah. So yeah, we're told we see Dr. Franklin as a doctor, and he's in a med lab trying to help, wounded people in the war. And someone, a military person comes in as exposition for you, sir. You're Dr. Franklin. You hitchhiked. You worked with some Minbari. You got to study their, anatomy. You know stuff about it. We could use you for biochemical war. And you're like, okay, thanks for the exposition. And that is his in-show lore that we already knew if you've watched the show. And he goes, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to help it. Franklin says, I'm not going to give you my records. He's going to get court-martialed, and he's able to get out of that by agreeing to go on a dangerous mission. The dangerous mission is going to have Sheridan, who's been asked because he's a big deal, Franklin because of what we just said, and then Jakar, who was selling...
Because he speaks Minbari, right?
Two parts.
The translator.
Jakar was selling weapons, and I appreciated this very quickly. So the Narn are selling weapons to Earth. And they're like, if this is on the sly, we'll sell you the weapons. They look like Centauri. The Minbari will never know. And we find out Delenn, she's all right, so the Narn are selling weapons to Earth. Because of that, we'll be able, we can use the Narn to talk to Earth because at this point, it's impossible optically for anybody on the Minbari to talk to Earth, and no one on Earth is going to believe it because they're leaving no survivors. So the people in place, as mentioned, Jakar says he speaks Minbari, which I didn't get because
Londo just needed some way to insert Jakar into the story. Oh yes, he also speaks fluent Minbari.
But yeah, despite the fact that we were told early on the Minbari were mysterious and nobody knows anything about them, random doctor on Earth Force and Jakar are like, yeah, I speak the language. I know their anatomy. So they are going to go with Sheridan to meet with someone from the Minbari to talk a ceasefire. And it's going to be the Ranger guy. And this is where we do get the Londo, everybody's together now, right? So Left Court says, Sheridan, go talk with the Minbari. Bring along Dr. Franklin and Jakar, who don't remember that they met each other in the future, if we believe the story is canon.
Yeah, that's so hilarious, because the opening of season 2 is Sheridan taking over for Sinclair and introducing himself to these characters as part of the episode.
Right.
So they all go to meet, and then Londo inserts himself. I think we've foreshadowed this a few times, where he says, the Centauri went, hey, if the Earth survived this war, we don't want them close to the Narn. The Narn are giving them weapons, so stop the weapons deal. So they don't realize it's a diplomatic deal. They think it's a weapons deal. Centauri come out and ambush it and kill. Like, I have loved that in all of these ambushes, it is a random Minbari person that just, everybody else is fine, but one random important Minbari person just dies. In this case, the Ranger, and he's, all right, we're screwed. Remember the secret passcode before I die, though.
I was going to say perfect sequencing, right? Like just the machinations to get there to connect the dots.
Tell me if I'm wrong here, Mike. I'm sorry to just be a real stick in the mud about this with his character and stuff. Because, he's playing this tragic. Because I didn't know. I couldn't have known. I regret this terribly. And I'm, as I'm watching this,
he
I was
there
like,
the whole time. Of course he knew what was going on. You were just saying how Delenn came up, and it was so funny that we know that the Narn gave you guys weapons. Yeah, it's been pretty obviously how all you guys are dealing with in these early stages that he knew.
But I guess what I'm saying is when he's trying to play the pathos of, oh, I regret this. How could I have known? And I'm like, but this is before your initial character. And it's to come back to what I've already referenced it once on the show, the Han shot versus I'm going, you're resetting the character before our starting point of the character to put him in a place that detracts from that character's arc.
Yeah, it's like so that you're saying like they're taking his arc and giving him that early realization before he actually does it, which I think it meshes well with him retelling his own story. It's like him recontextualizing his past to say what we know he's learned, just not how he's saying he did it here.
The Minbari capture our crew. They capture everybody, and they're dead. And Delenn sees Sheridan, and so those two get together. And there is even a point where she has her memories scanned in vivid 4K detail to remember everything about her past, including she hears what Dukat when he dies. He actually whispered, "You are a child of Valen." That little triangle thing that they put in front of people. A triluminary, Mike, to give you a trivia answer question.
Triluminary much?
That detects if you have Valen DNA in you, basically. So her being a child of Valen and Valen being involved in other people, which we find out later, is going to be a big deal. So Delenn hears like Sheridan, he's being captured, going to take him away, and he screams out, I know what is it? I know what's in Dukat's chamber or something.
Yeah, because it's what that Lennon was telling him before he died, just about Dukat's chamber. Yeah, but that's what he screams. Like, I know what Dukat's chamber is.
And he says, Entel Za, which has been, it's interesting. I think that word has multiple meanings. To defend it, we have been told that Minbari have the same word means different things. Sorry to... I can only do this so many times where I'm like,
aloha.
Sort of makes, yeah, exactly.
Sure.
It sort of makes sense. But Entel Za means the future. It's also what we call the One, the leader of the Rangers. So Delenn's, they have the passcode, let him go, which is wild too, if you just think about the optics of this from everybody else. So,
and I was trying to understand, like, why would an old dude be reincarnated or whatever, methodology into another old person? Is this the canon that they established that old spirits go into old bodies?
Well, no, I mean, he's been there the whole time, and that's the implication. I think we can, let me just make sure if I'm wrapping. So that wraps up everybody knew each other the whole time and forgot. So apparently they just let the guy that blew up their biggest fleet ship, they just let go. They let Jakar, the guy that's been supplying, go. They let Franklin, the guy that has the knowledge to use biochemical weapons, go. But at this point, it's because the war's over. They're going to win. Finally, we get a good narrator sequence where Londo is talking about the war. And he's just, the Earthers were so brave, but screwed. It's like when they fought with guns, when they ran out of guns, they fought with sticks, they fought with hands.
The Grinch again, the Grinch. They still sing? I took away their Christmas hams and they're still singing. Why? The Minbari are still fighting.
Okay, so the one legitimately poignant scene in voiceover scene in the thing.
Just taken over by the Grinch.
Mike did that too. Thank you, Mike. So that's a good scene. But Earth's going to lose. And this leads us up to one of the plot points that started off Babylon 5, the show proper, which is the Battle of the Line. We have a Hoth scenario. I keep doing Star Wars comparisons, I notice, where the Earth President's like, we're about to get destroyed. but if you guard, we can try and get transports off and, go out into the universe. And she said something like every 10 minutes you give us gives us like hundreds more to live. So this is Earth's last best hope is to, dissipate across the galaxy and have thousands of Earth people across the galaxy, even though we're all dead. And, we're really counting on you. And that does give us our Captain Sinclair moment. Very clunkily dropped in, unfortunately, because it's using all footage from season 1. Michael O'Hare, the actor at this point, was not in acting shape, could not have come back to the show. I think they do a stand-in for him at one point because we have a flashback where he's like hanging on despite the fact.
Yeah, there's at least one that wasn't in the show there, but yeah, it's all just scenes from the shots from before in the show. It just kind of gives it away that this doesn't really work as a movie in any way on its own, and that this is kind of a major character. This is like one of the major things that happens in this movie, and he's introduced in the last 10 minutes of the entire film.
But he's not a major character in this movie.
No, he's not.
I don't mean maybe not in the movie, in this sequence, right? He is just he's less important than everyone else we've seen.
Exactly. And I think that's the point, is that he should be, and they really can't.
And by the way, giving the full recap, I realize there's like anybody listening that hasn't seen the whole show is like, they're destroying Earth, the last best hope, right? The last couple of military people that are there. A guy essentially in an X-Wing, Captain Sinclair, is leading a squadron that just gets blown up. And he eventually says, hey, I'm going to ram you, dying, I'm taking one of you with me. Delenn we're screwed. And the Vorlon says to her, hey, the truth will become evident when it's there, or some other thing. That's how Vorlons talk. So she's like, what do I do? The Vorlons, you'll know it when you see it. So as they're destroying Earth, she says, hey, if we're going to destroy Earth, let's get the passcodes. Let's get this scorched Earth code. She says, why don't we capture someone? We can interrogate him, find out more. And this is a brutal line that did play, because the Warrior Cats guys, you better choose quick, because we're running out of options. I was like, that's brutal, but it was good. So they beam aboard a Star Fury, which happens to have Sinclair. And then we get this flashback. So it's hilarious because, he's in stockades or something, even though they're an advanced race, getting interrogated, and sees Delenn, and what they the answer that's been said in show, and it's not clear in this movie at all, but the answer is Minbari have a rule from Balin that Minbari don't kill Minbari. And Minbari believe in the power of the soul. And while that's spiritual based, they're advanced enough in the future. They have technology to, detect souls. And thank goodness JMS never goes the midichlorian route. He just keeps it at triluminaries. Thank goodness. So they're interrogating this prisoner. They bring out the soul device, and they're like, uh-oh, Earthers have Earth Minbari souls. What? That's a problem.
Yeah. And not only does it just in-birth Minbari soul, this guy Sinclair has the soul of Valen, the guy who made the prophecy 1,000 years ago.
Which, from a viewer is not explained. It just is dropped. And you're like, okay.
That is pretty huge if you know everything on the show, and it just comes in and goes with the dud in the movie.
Was this not a fact that you guys knew prior to this?
Oh, no, it's explained in the show when Lanier, the second in command to Delenn, at one point in the show just comes forward and is like, I'm just going to explain everything to you. So they literally do that. And from that note, for what it's worth, Delenn should have been the one telling the story. But if you were going to try...
You say in the beginning, this is them... They're trying to show what I would want to see out of a movie. This is supposed to be one of the biggest events, and I would want them to put everything into what happens this last 10 minutes to tie everything together, explain the war a little bit better, especially if I had never seen a show before and needed to catch up. And it just misses the shot at the end and doesn't do what it should set out to do, which is to set up a new user coming into Babylon 5 with this event.
Right. Either it is rehashing something that your fans already know, so therefore why waste the screen time, or it's trying to inform you as a new viewer towards something that you'll need. But anyone joining at this point, it would boggle my mind, but then it should have some new insight that is in there from before.
I do feel that JMS probably said, I need to give Michael O'Hare something in this movie. But he can't act in it. He can't be in it. If we're focusing on these characters, you could have been following Captain Sinclair in the military around this time. But because they decided to focus on Sheridan,
I think that could have been the good movie, because that's something we'd never seen. We'd never seen like Sinclair's early time leading up to that. And I think like some of the stuff on Mars, I think there's a much better movie that could have been made along those lines and still got this story out.
We've rehashed this a couple times in the show, particularly in season 1 and season 2 of this show. But Michael O'Hare, the actor who played Jeffrey Sinclair, had a neurological,
dementia, right?
Something like that, but a neurological disorder. So he can't do the Sinclair story, even though that's a better story. And then he wants to include Sinclair in the narrative, but the only way to do that is to use splice footage from season 1, which doesn't drop in well. And then again, at this point, the only way a new viewer would get the story would be to have Lanier show up again and explain the story again, and we're out of time. So that's the end of it. And we do find out that they're like, we're going to end the war. The only way we can do this is to surrender mysteriously, which is one of the big things. They can explain to the Minbari people why they had to surrender. Earth will just have to be confused. They're going to then approach Earth and say, hey, let's make a big space station together where we can all be diplomats so this doesn't happen again. The Vorlons are going to come along. Again, I'm telling you the start of the show, in the beginning, none of this is explained at the end of the show. We do find out Sinclair's mind is going to be wiped. Mike was noted on this in the script. He was like, weird, they don't talk about this a lot. For what it's worth, telepaths exist in this universe. We know that Minbari have powerful telepaths, but in both this movie and in the show, it's kind of left alone. And so, we could have ended this movie with a lot of interesting stuff about the Babylon Project, but what we do instead is, Ryan, I think you said at the very beginning, Londo was just like, yeah, a bunch of other stuff happens. And anyway, the kids run off. Londo orders some drinks because and you're a fan of the show. That's when this happens, which is kind of cool, but also kind of silly. Turns out, Mike, we didn't know this at the time. He had a video screen into the cell where Sheridan and Delenn
watching them,
which is, and that's not the first time either, Ryan, where the character is voyeured into another. It happens.
But no, you were just saying it like this movie should end with them starting Babylon 5 and getting people excited about, okay, now let's see like the more of the full story of it. And instead it's ending on the drunk Londo scene, which you would only really understand if you really saw and paid attention to some of the most complex episodes deep in season 3.
And he's forecasting out that there's even more to come. So in effect, it doesn't even matter to go back to season 1 because his sequence picks up after all of that arc as well. Because you're like, hey, everything you knew before doesn't matter. Now's the big stuff that happens.
Is when this character about to die. So you're saying that's not the end of the story.
But how can he be telling us that it's his end? Like, how does he knows there's more? So therefore he doesn't die there.
But he does.
But he can't.
But he knows he's going to die.
But he can't die if he says there's more to the story. And he says it with a prophetic level, not
I get exactly where you're. I think that was just kind of another misfire because like he's trying to say there's more to the story in general, but
I won't be here.
Yeah, but not for me. See you guys later.
And Ryan, what you're pointing out there though is that's actually problematic to the character's arc because one of the biggest parts of his arc is he is supposed to give in to his biggest fear and basically let himself die because the only way Centauri survives here. If he's alive, he's the emperor, he's in control, and he's being like, we didn't see it this way. He's being controlled by a like parasitic creature that's on him. And so he's also drunk. If he's got free will talking to these kids, he's drunk. And we do know that was established that he's going to be getting drunk because that's the only way he's going to be able to do anything. So if he stays alive, he's being controlled. And as soon as he sobers up, he's going to issue commands that essentially destroy his planet. So his only way out here is he's going to free Sheridan and Delenn. He is going to let himself die, and that's going to free his people. And that's, again, spoiler, but it's already been established in the show at this point if we're watching after season 4. That is his arc. So yes, you are 100% right to say, how is the character whose arc ends with him giving into his greatest fear saying that's not the end? Although, try to do what you've been doing the whole show, Mike. End, though, is... that is him, the false lie to the kids, right? That is him realizing it and putting on a brave face as he realized it. So, but again, that doesn't even hit unless you're a major fan of the show and really introspecting, which is not what you should be doing for an hour and a half TV movie.
Right. And it doesn't even need to be a TV movie, right? Many books have started with something to the effect of, I woke up that day and that's when I realized I was dead. And this is how it happened, right? Mm-hmm. And it can be poetic. It can be prophetic. It can be something, but it ends up being more prophetically illusory about some other stuff. And so it's really kind of hard to grasp how much more is coming, how much was in the past, and why I need to care about anything.
That is, wow, nihilistic but accurate take. And I mean, I think when we were kind of given the backstory, that's been explained a lot more in books, this really did kind of sum up the TNT JMS relationship, which is no one knew exactly what they wanted. The schedule was rushed. The output was kind of muddled. The original thing was a 5-year planned arc. Everything after season 4, Babylon 5 related, was a combination of executive meddling, overworked people, not knowing what they want, under budget. At this point, this is kind of the first mover disadvantage. We're all techies, right? Where, being first isn't always the biggest advantage. When Babylon 5 came out 5 years ago, it was ahead of the curve on narrative storytelling, was one of the first to embrace low-budget CGI for special effects. We've now hit 1998. You're saying that exactly. Video games like Wing Commander are using the same technology and using it better. Star Trek has picked up your playbook for narrative storytelling. We're about to enter like the HBO era of narrative stuff. So it's
Stargate was there, and Farscape, and then you have other shows like X-Files and Space Above and Beyond, and and Sequest DSV, right? There's a lot knocking on the door, trying to figure some of these things out.
All around the 90s, it was like bubbling everywhere. Yeah.
So as a huge fan of Babylon 5, a huge defender, and I mean, by the way, the postscript, right? I can be the Londo and be like, and JMS went off and was fine. Like, he went off and made Changeling, which was his big Hollywood hit. He wrote a bunch for Marvel. He got to do Sense8. So like, he was fine. But as a fan of Babylon 5, it is kind of rough to say this movie is kind of watching your favorite athlete and going, oh, okay, they're not an all-star anymore.
This was a big moment where they could have taken and made Babylon 5 into the next property that could have gone on for years. Like, it could have been another Star Trek, where if that Crusade spin-off series had done something that took notice, had a lot more into it, and had more legs behind it, we could be seeing regular Babylon 5 series, because there is a lot to hang your hat on in this universe. But for whatever reason, they just, everything kind of conspired to have him stumble out of the gate here, had a lackluster season 5, and it didn't go anywhere.
And just so, because I don't know, where does the universe end? Or is that in a future episode of yours?
Yeah, we're not there yet chronologically. That is, technically, you get to the end of season 5, and they have the finale that he had planned to play at the end of season 4, before they even knew that TNT was going to save them and make a season 5. The episode that's just a couple before this could be seen as like the last true Babylon 5 episode. And they just kind of held on to what the real finale was, and made a bunch of other stuff in between before they actually revealed it.
Yeah, and what I'll note, a animated movie like The Way Home or something, I think, came out recently for Babylon 5. For what it's worth, property rights, all JMS has rights to his movies. He doesn't have rights to the show. So he can't make episodic television with Babylon 5 characters, even if he wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. Warner Brothers has to approve it. So even if Sci-Fi approached him, he couldn't make a show, even animated. But he is able to make movies. So he made an animated movie called like The Way Home or something. Mm-hmm. And it's a multiverse episode where Sheridan, because of a time travel episode prior, is hopping between parallel dimensions where different things have happened. And it's fascinating, but it felt a little bad because this was released well after, say, Rick and Morty. And so JMS had these ideas back in the 90s, but because he didn't have access to the property for years, by the time he got to tell that story, it's then behind where it's going. So that's what I'm even noting, right? Even though Babylon 5 in 94 was ahead of the curve, in 98 it's now behind the curve. And a lot of things he could have done with Babylon 5 in the 90s that could have been revolutionary and groundbreaking, by the time he's gotten to tell them are behind the times. And it's Like I said, the creator is fine. The first 4 seasons exist as, an artifact that is great to enjoy. But, it is kind of a bummer that, that was kind of all she wrote for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Now, Ryan, I think we know our answer. We already kind of answered what are you going to do next with Babylon 5? But I figured we revisit the white whale briefly before we clock out of here. You've seen how it started. You've had 2 old men ramble at you, and I felt insane doing it, but, maybe it was fun for listeners. Do you think there's going to be another attempt for you to hit the wall on Babylon 5 at some point in the future after this?
I think what we didn't cover here, and and not to do this and now per se, but the idea that says what is because this movie doesn't inspire the arc that it's about to tell.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I could use Rogue One as an example. If you went and watched Rogue One, despite all of the Easter eggs that are inside Rogue One, the movie was a fun movie. It had character drama. It had intensity. It had some things you've probably seen in commercials, even if you've never seen a Star Wars. And at the end of the day, it told a really good, compelling story. And then go, I've never thought about Star Wars. Let me go watch episode 4 and see where this picks up. This, as a prequel, does not feel like it really lends you to go back to season 1 and feel like I am beholden with some knowledge and feel empowered as a viewer to go into that series. You just have to go, oh yeah, I liked some of what I got here as a reminder that the special effects, oddly enough, are still okay. The cutting is a bit aggressively fast to kind of get around the render time, because the render times on Lightwave would still take a while to render. So it's a lot of cuts to kind of get that feel. And that just became their look and feel of what it was. But any of the characters that you're now going to literally see on episode 1, there are very few of them. You get just a couple. So even your carrots that you have are kind of slight. And to a point that Mike made, if you know where your story ends, if I know that Londo is going to meet his fate, even if I can decide to extrapolate that from the end of this movie, I know as a viewer, I could probably be a little bit more detached about Londo's story. Would I give it a shot? I think anything that is old in this era that was running 26 episodes, usually an hour a piece, there is some fillers, and there's some of that stuff. So maybe I would say this to you, if you can sum it up in a tweet or 2, what is the compelling reason why someone would watch 5 seasons of this show? What is your answer when sitting on a plane to tell someone, we'll watch Babylon 5?
Yeah, my usual answer goes right away. It's a successful story about how a democratic, neoconservative society lets fascism take over without realizing it, and what can be actively done about it. Because that's the story that ultimately, once they get through a lot of the plots, it gets told for the last half of season 4 and is the big success of JMS, because that's the story he wanted to tell, and thought that television in this serialized format will let me pace this out in a way, if I'm allowed to have these same people over series of years and they don't leave me, and I'm allowed to tell this story on every level, this is what I want to tell. And I've put it before, it's like bringing up the prequels so much. That's what it feels like. That's the story, the theme behind the Star Wars prequels, is you watch a Galactic Emperor kind of rot from within. And this is that same story, but I think it gets to a lot more of the beats that you need to get to, where Sheridan, as he's becoming this military leader and going against this fascistic government that's taken over Earth, he remembers the humanity in everybody and pulls on almost like a Katamari ball of people who, like, he's not fighting against and killing the enemy. It's a civil war. He's bringing them about to his side in very subtle ways, getting around propaganda. So, yeah. That's probably about 3 or 4 tweets I used to explain it, but yeah, that's what I would say for it. Dre, you got an answer for that one?
I got 2 things. Either you watch it for nostalgia, which I had, or history. If you go into this as a historian of sci-fi, of pop culture, and are willing to do background research that we've done, I think that makes it worth watching. I think for you, Ryan, like the white whale thing does make it fun, like a challenge. I've had things like that, video games I haven't beaten from the 80s or 90s that I'm like, man, that would be fun to do. That's about it. I don't have much more on that. The easy segue that you did give me an easy out for, though, is if you think Babylon 5 is too much, and it is, it's 110 episodes or something, because it's 22 a season. There's a great podcast called You Got to Check This Out, where two guys pick out just a couple episodes. You can just check out those episodes, listen to us talk about it. We'll fill you in on the back stuff. We will force other people to go through the horrors of watching various episodes that by our own volition after the fact would admit, hey, maybe aren't the best to watch. So that's what I will say. And I will cheat and bring us to our kind of last segment that we usually do, Mike, which is the end of the show. The show is called You Got to Check This Out. Yeah, we told you Babylon 5. But this is where we say what you got to check out. I'm saying you should check out our podcast, How Meta of Me. But Ryan and or Mike, you can rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first. Do either of you have stuff you think our listeners could check out? And sky is the limit. It could be a fun rock. It could be a flavor of jelly bean at your local store. Something people should check out.
Sure. At the time that this podcast drops, you will be able to go online and watch a streaming production of a theater show that I am producing right now called Star Trek 2240. It is a Purim spiel that is a musical and dramatic mashup of predominantly Star Trek, but Star Wars and Flash Gordon and Doctor Who and all sorts of fun sci-fi tropes coming in. And they take popular musical and TV songs, remix them with songs that fit the story, a la like a Mel Brooks Spaceballs type of feel to it. So it's 90 minutes of ridiculousness about the voyages of the starship Shushan. So that is ehnt.org/Stardrek.
Yeah, and then I'll give any you should check this out too. My wife's podcast. My wife and my son have been putting out a book club reading podcast for parents and kids. It's called Hey, Have You Read This Yet? And you can get it anywhere where you download podcasts. Karen and Annie take turns each week introducing. Either Karen takes a book from her childhood or Annie takes a modern book and shows it to Karen. They talk about it. They've done Bunnicula, Wayside Stories from Sideways School. They're doing a couple of Science Kid comics. And then every third episode, Andy and I jump in with a comics episode. We're doing the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl series. So yeah, definitely check that out if you can.
That is awesome. Thank you both for being here. Ryan, we've got the plugs. Any socials you want people to check out, or are you all good on the explicit plugs to do a call back to the pre-show?
I'm on Instagram at Nightpearl, NIGHTPEARL.
Awesome. Okay, everybody. Thank you for checking out. Ryan, thank you for letting us take you a little over time, but we had to...
We had to wrap it up.
There's a lot in that movie. We haven't done a movie before.
We have not. So it technically was a 2-episoder, but Mike, we're not releasing this as a 2-parter, all going out. Ryan, thank you so much. Mike, thank you for letting me do this. As always, MikeSlater.com. You got to check this out everywhere podcasts are found. Mike is Slatron or Slatron11 across the socials. I am Nerd Numbers, and we will be doing season 5 of Babylon 5 next. You don't have to watch anything.
We've got something special prepared, so we're not sure how it's going to come across, but all we're saying is watch whatever you want from season 5. You've gotten to the good bits already.
You don't have to watch season 5. Just blue sky at Mike and say, tell me what you liked about season 5. That'll be sufficient. We'll see you next time for that.
Cheers, all.
As they're destroying Earth, she says, hey, if we're going to destroy Earth, let's get the passcodes. Let's get this scorched Earth code. Call back to a previous episode. Listen to the last episode of Nerd, or listen to the last episode of You Got to Check This Out. Sorry, Mike.
Will you?